Open science, open publishing, open data, open minds. Openness is a very laudable goal, an ideal around which many scientists converge, an ideal around which all this symposium revolves. But we don't break down barriers with wishful thinking. We break them down with concrete initiatives by setting up the infrastructure and interfaces needed for collecting, curating, and, first and foremost, making a tremendous amount of data accessible. How can we facilitate innovative ways to communicate and monitor research? How do we shift scholarly communication towards openness and transparency? Please welcome the speaker Natalia Manola, Managing Director of OpenAIRE, who will give us some clues.
Good morning. My name is Natalia Manola. I am based in Athens, Greece, and I'm the Managing Director of OpenAIRE. OpenAIRE is open science infrastructure in Europe, and I'm really honored to be here and to know more about the initiatives that are happening in Canada and around the world. And my presentation and my talk will be about, infrastructures in Europe, about open publishing and about data and open data, and how we are moving, give you the European context and in many times the lessons learned throughout this our experience. So what are open science? We've talked about open science this morning, I guess. We're talking about open access. We're talking about collaboration. We're talking about innovation. We're talking about participation. So open science is a wide umbrella of things. And if you see in my slides, we're talking about collaboration and contributing of researchers, with publications, with research data, lab notes, and other processes, how they are freely available and accessed. But it's also about reusing, redistribution, and reproduction. And what is one of the key things that we should think about when we're talking about open science is that it should move outside the academic walls. So when we're talking about open research beyond academia, about innovation, about our collaborations with industry, the public government sector, and also citizen science. So this is the context of the open science. In practice, what does it entail? Open and fair. It's about open access to publications. It's about research data, software lab books, methodologies and protocols, educational resources, processes, annotations, so we can go on forever. But what is also now within a data-driven research environment, we're talking about linked open science, so how we can connect things together. Where did they come from? Because we are talking about transparency and accountability, but also we're talking about access to resources for analytics. So this is in a data-driven research environment. Computing and storage and everything that goes around it is also important. So in this open science environment, and I have to say that in OpenAIRE and in Europe, we have been here for about 10 years now, 10 to 11 years. There are a lot of challenges and opportunities on how to go ahead, because what we see is that in a top-down fashion is that open science is here to stay. It's up to us to see how to make it stay. And how to make it sustainable. So what are the challenges and opportunities that we encounter in this environment? Challenges. One of the challenges that we see is that, the global and the local. So we're talking about the globalizing research endeavor, but we're talking about local implementation and local support. This is a challenge. How do we speak with each other? We're talking about a data-driven research. So we have, we're talking about skilled people, skilled researchers, skilled librarians. We're talking about how to educate these people. We're talking about big and small science or big and small data. It's not only the big data from the sensors that is important. It's many times and oftentimes it's also the small data. When you gather it all together, it becomes a big data. we're the challenge is researcher in the center. So researchers, how can we make researchers adopt open science? So we're talking about reputation, incentive, and services, and how can we make it easy for them, because their job is to do research. You know, open science is something that they need to be trained to do. We need to embed it in their workflows, and this is something that it's one of the hardest challenges. uh, how how to make, like they're using all these tools around, how can we have this paradigm and shift it into the research workflows. And then when we're talking about open science, one of the key factors is quality. Quality comes with fair research data or fair research content, and it's also about how we can contextualize all this research to find out where it comes from and how it's connected. So we're talking about linked research. The opportunities now, because we are in the job of implementing open science. We see all around us that there is a new sharing culture in social media, in social networks. We see innovative communication models. So the opportunity that we have here is how can we learn from what is happening in our everyday life and transfer it into science. Knowledge extraction and exchange made easier via artificial intelligence. So let's take advantage of it. We see that in many areas, whether it is industry, whether it's education, whether it's research, whether it's public government, everyone is building their platforms. So how can we learn from each other from these different sectors? And what we have found, at least in sharing data and in doing open science, is that we have already an existing scholarly communication infrastructure. How can we build on this, and how can we make it work? Can we make it work for open science? So this scholarly communication for us in OpenAIRE, this is our core, the core of what we're doing. And what we see is that this is a common language. It presents a common language for researchers to bridge views, perspectives, and gaps. They need to communicate. They need to communicate their research with the peers, but also with the others. So this is what they know, and what we want to do is build on this. But what we need to do is to transform it. We need to transform it from a closed to an open scholarly communication system, and whatever that entails. And also, what we need to do is to transfer it down to the level of the research, where the research is taking place, because now scholarly communication is at the end, is an end product of when the research is being taken. So how can we move it? How can we move this, move the processes, move the mechanisms, and move the mentality further a bit below? So, what is happening now in Europe? This was the context. What is happening in Europe? Europe, what we are and what we are proud of, it's about diversity, and diversity in many areas. Cultural, policies, when you talk about research, organizational, uh, many different systems, legal, and different infrastructure, mature infrastructure versus less developed infrastructure. What is what has happened in Europe is that we started, I will not go into detail, from 2007 with open access to publications, then data default. We are here in the middle with the open science cloud, and we are moving now ahead to our new framework program, Horizon Europe, until 27 or 2028, which open science will be the modus operandi. So we have come a long way, and now we are consolidating our efforts, I would say, through the European Open Science Cloud. It's a European-wide initiative where we want to put all the infrastructure, the services, the skills, everything in there for researchers to be able to produce open and fair data, as open as possible, as close as necessary, and to make sure that they have the tools in order to process and manage this data. And what OpenAIRE has been doing, and this is what I will present now, is that we have tried to put open science in action, starting from open access to publication, now open science in action. And I will just explain a bit, just a few elements, because this is it's we're doing more than what I'm able to present in 20 minutes. So the key characteristics, and I'm saying this because I believe that those are the characteristics that we have learned over the years. We designed it in such a way because of the diversity of Europe, but also because we see it works in order to accommodate community requirements. So what we see is that this is a distributed and participatory infrastructure connecting different actors across Europe, and I will go further down on it. We're bringing together technical and social aspects. And what we believe is from day one is that unless you have the right people embedded in the right places in order to do policies, to support, to train, to give technical services, but the people are there, we didn't think that it would work. And now what we're glad to see is that our mentality has is uptaken by many other initiatives. The other thing is that we are based on existing initiatives because we are an umbrella and coordination organization with technical services, but it's about what I would say it's about federation. It's about federation of data repositories, of publication repositories, is connecting together. And what we have found through the course of our years is that it's not just about putting stuff out there. It's not just about putting a publication or research data or a software, but the contextualizing part of it is how we link science, how we know where it came from, how we can trace it, and how we can trace not just the research results, but also in sometimes the funders, they want to trace people, organizations, they want to trace the results. This is very important, and this is very important not only for scientific reasons, but also for discovery reasons. Uh, uh, how we have structured our work. We have three pillars of actions. We have the services because we were a service-driven infrastructure from the beginning. So it's about connecting, it's about federating. We have the policies. We have so many countries in Europe. Policies are now with the European Open Science Cloud, they are starting to talk about alignment from a top-down level. And of course, it's about training. It's about skilling our personnel first, and then skilling the researchers, because this still has to be distributed. We have to empower the people at the right places in order for them to train. So we have this train the trainers mentality. The rest of my presentation will mostly focus on services. So because it's about open science in action. So what we believe is that what we're building in OpenAIRE is that we want to offer trusted services to the global community. And by trusted services, it's not only about technology, it's also about governance, who is, it's a community governed services and infrastructure. It's from the community to the community. So this is where we started from, with open access, and how we should not lock also in on technologies, but also have the strength in our hands in the community in order to move forward. It's also about co-developing open science resources. I will come in a bit on this, but we are a global, we are a European, and then with links to the global community. So what is important for us is to co-develop resources that are of use in the scholarly communication ecosystem. And how do we do that? It's one of the important things is about building synergies. We can, what we are aiming for is our members, because OpenAIRE now has 36 members. We're a legal entity and we have 36 members, is that each member is supposed to bring synergies within their country. Then we have the regions that are working together. So Europe is a region. Then through OpenAIRE, we approach players around the world. And then we work on the thematic, domain discipline synergies. And this is important because, as I said before, the scholarly communication and the open science and research is a global endeavor. We cannot really lock down into our own little cell and bubble and do our own thing. We need to work together if we want to be successful. So a few words on the services in general. What we have found, and this is another lesson learned when building a scholarly communication ecosystem, is that it's not services are not just for researchers. There is a research is an interconnected endeavor. It's a chain of reactions. So what we need to see is to see that the services for all the actors involved. This is very important because you have funders, you have librarians, you have institutions, you have research managers, funders, facility operators. What we need to do is to include everyone in the process, and this is hard, this is tricky, but this is the only way that we have found that open science can really work. And then the other thing is that what we need to think about, as I said before, is that we need to close the loop from discovery to publishing to monitoring. So this is how we cover all these different actors involved. Then our services is, and any scholarly communication services is that we offer them at different levels. So we have the providers of the scholarly communication systems, like repository managers, for example, where we need to connect them through standards and APIs. And then we have the end users, which are always, the researchers, of course, but also the content and service providers are users of this infrastructure. And this is a cycle, this is a never-ending cycle. But what we need to have in mind is that when we are building open science, and if we want to make it successful, it's about, we need to think of all these actors. In OpenAIRE, we started 10 years ago from the basics, interoperability. So open science, how to exchange, 4 minutes, how to exchange. So the guidelines is that we have the OpenAIRE guidelines. We have guidelines for repository managers, for content providers. So for literature, for data, for software, for CRE systems. So including everyone. And through these guidelines, it was a first thing how we can build this federation and this linked open science cloud, if you want. And then what we have is a suite of services for all research related actors. So we have services like Zenodo, which is a repository at CERN. We have Amnesia, which is a service for anonymization, Argos for a data management plan. But also we have services like Connect, which are for communities, how they can have their own space in order to build their open science and the protocols and their little corner out in this world. And what we make sure is that they get open science out of the box. We have Monitor for research funders. We have all these kinds of services. But what we have found in the past 2 or 3 years, I think, is that because we have been against walls too many times, is that we're building synergies to co-develop global assets, and I will explain a bit. So our new endeavor is the OpenAIRE Research Graph, which is, I would call it a scholarly communication graph, where you have research outcomes connected to people, to organizations, to funders, to research data, to software, to people, any kind of entities. And what we're trying to build this research graph, we're trying to build it for two reasons. First is to make the discovery more intelligent, because if you are building this kind of graph, then you can start building artificial intelligence and these kinds of services on top. So you can help the researchers, navigate in this ecosystem. But also we're building it for research administrators and policymakers in order to be able to monitor stuff. What are these pathways that they are interested for, especially in impact assessment. The synergies through that I was referring to is that I will give an example, a use case that we want to pursue in the next year. For example, we're building the scholarly communication graph, which is global, semi-curated, and we have colleagues in the Human Brain Project, and I brought this example because of the venue, is they have the eBrains knowledge graph. They are doing it, specifically for their domain. They have much more knowledge for their domain than what we have. So the idea is that how can we bring the efforts together, and how can we help each other, and how can we exchange data? So this is something that you can think as synergies, and you don't have to do it alone. And this is very important. Another synergy that we have as an example, which is now a pilot, is across countries or continents. So OpenAIRE, we are working through the Canadian CARL, which is the Canadian Association of Research Libraries, and through CORE, the Confederation of Open Access Repositories, is that to say, okay, uh, Canadian universities and institutions have repositories, but they don't have the guidelines. They don't have now for the pilot phase. How can we speed up the process in for them so that they can aggregate, so they can validate the metadata, so they can uh, exchange this information within Canada. So what we did is we did a pilot with them. We gave, they enforced the open air guidelines. We They used our aggregating tools. They gave us their funding database. We used them in our text mining processes, and now we're giving them, as a pilot again, monitoring tools for open science. This whole process requires synergies and collaborations on multiple levels, from the top down to the technical people, and this is the way we see, open science in action, in order to success to a success road. And this is what I wanted to convey. Those are the two messages that I wanted to convey. I would like to thank you all. And I'm hoping that, through this opportunity, we will be able, with the community here in Canada, to build more and better collaborations and relationships. Thank you.